This video is brought to you by Ground News. On Tuesday, gunmen killed 26 people in Indian-administered Kashmir, the region's deadliest attack against civilians for years. Tensions in the region, which is disputed and partially controlled by both India and Pakistan, are long-running, but the attack this week breaks a period of relative stability and is notable for its scale and targets. With India pointing the finger at Pakistan, relations between the two nuclear-armed neighbours have collapsed, raising fears of a fresh conflict between them. So in this video, we're going to explain the attack in Kashmir, India's significant response, and explore the potential for it to escalate into a military clash. Don't feel overwhelmed by endless news stories. Find out what you need to know every day with TLDR's Daily Briefing. Listen along in your favourite podcast app or by clicking the link in the description. We're going to start with a recap of Tuesday's deadly attack. On the 22nd of April, gunmen entered a meadow near the town of Pahalgam, a popular travel destination in Indian-administered Kashmir, and opened fire on tourists and sightseers, killing at least 25 Indian citizens and one Nepali national. The terror attack has rocked India, not just due to the high death toll, but also because of the targeting of civilian tourists rather than security forces. The region's chief minister said the attack was, quote, much larger than anything we've seen directed at civilians in recent years. It prompted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to cut short his trip to Saudi Arabia, while his defence minister vowed a loud and clear response to those behind the attack. A relatively little-known group called the Resistance Front, or TRF, has reportedly claimed responsibility for the attack, with social media posts quoted by Reuters as expressing anger at demographic change in the region, spurred by the settling of 85,000 outsiders. TRF has carried out a number of deadly attacks since it became active in 2019, and it's considered by India to be an offshoot or front for the Pakistani-based militant group Lashkar-e-Taiba, which seeks to bring Indian-administered Kashmir under Pakistani control, and was responsible for the 2008 Mumbai attacks that killed 175 people. Pakistan itself condemned and denied any involvement in this week's attack, but India has targeted Pakistan in retaliation, accusing it of supporting cross-border terrorism. Now, before we go any further, we're going to need to go back in time to understand the background to the conflict in Kashmir and between India and Pakistan. The partition of the Indian subcontinent in 1947 established two neighbouring countries, Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan, but left the Muslim-majority princely state of Jammu and Kashmir to decide its own fate. The state's ruler delayed the decision, initially considering independence, but later agreed to join India in return for help against tribesmen invading from Pakistan. This sparked the Indo-Pakistani War of 1947-48, and the subsequent boundary between the troops became the de facto border, known as the Line of Control, between Indian-administered and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Meanwhile, China has controlled eastern parts of what was the princely state since the 1950s, with said areas also claimed by India. India and Pakistan went on to fight further wars over Kashmir in 1965 and 1999, though the line of control largely remained and remains the same. However, separatists seeking Kashmiri independence or unification with Pakistan launched an insurgency against India in 1989, with support from Pakistan. The insurgency continues to this day, and while a former Pakistani president has admitted the country backed Kashmiri insurgents in the 1990s, the country denies that it still does so, but says it supports Kashmiri calls for self-determination. Over the years, India, with a firm hand, has sought to bring its part of Kashmir further under governmental control. Most significantly, in 2019, Prime Minister Modi stripped the state of Jammu and Kashmir of its special autonomous status, splitting it into two federally governed territories, Jammu and Kashmir, which has a Muslim majority, and Ladakh, largely Buddhist and Muslim. Aiming to preemptively curb potential unrest in Jammu and Kashmir, the Indian government accompanied the change in status with an extended security lockdown that saw tens of thousands of additional troops deployed, thousands of people detained, and intermittent communication blackouts that cut off internet and phone services. The scrapping of the region's special status and subsequent loosening of domicile laws, making it easier for non-Kashmiris to gain domicile certificates, has sparked fear among some Kashmiris that their political power and their case for autonomy will be weakened by an influx of non-Kashmiri Hindu Indians. Modi's government justifies its approach to Kashmir as necessary to transform it for the better, by bringing security, economic development, and particularly tourism, which has boomed thanks to heavy governmental promotion. In fact, a surge in footfall over the past 3 years saw tourist numbers in the Kashmir Valley reach a record 3.5 million in 2024. These tourism figures, alongside a downtick in casualties from the conflict, help the Indian government to project strategic success and an image of normalcy for the region, despite the continued heavy security presence. However, Tuesday's attack may have shattered this illusion. So, how has India responded? Having accused Pakistan of supporting cross-border terrorism, but without publicly producing evidence, the Indian government announced a slew of measures. It downgraded diplomatic ties with Pakistan, shut the main border crossing, cancelled visas for Pakistanis, moved to expel diplomats and military attachés, and most notably suspended the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty, which regulates the sharing of water from the Indus River and its tributaries. This is significant, as Pakistan is heavily dependent on water from the river system for things like irrigation and hydropower. The treaty, brokered by the World Bank, has survived 2 wars and contains dispute resolution mechanisms, but has no provision for unilateral suspension or termination. And in response, the Pakistani Prime Minister's office said any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water belonging to Pakistan, as per the Indus Water Treaty, will be considered an act of war, and would be responded to with full force. Pakistan, which denies India's allegations and accused the Indian government of seeking to exploit a tragic incident, retaliated by cancelling visas for Indians, closing its airspace to Indian airlines, and suspending all trade with India. On Friday, it was reported that small arms fire had been exchanged overnight across the line of control in Kashmir, and later that day, India's defence chief visited the Indian-administered territory, where the army has launched search and destroy operations, ramped up troop numbers, and deployed surveillance drones, signalling a further militarisation of the region and curtailment of freedoms. Narendra Modi has vowed to pursue the perpetrators to the ends of the earth, and to punish every terrorist and their backers. The anger in India against Pakistan, sparked by the attack, may well compel Modi to pursue a military response. Military action would not be without precedent. In 2019, a militant attack in Jammu and Kashmir killed 40 Indian security personnel, prompting the Indian Air Force to strike inside Pakistan-administered territory for the first time in decades. Pakistan struck back, and a dogfight saw Pakistan shoot down an Indian jet. In this 2019 case, India launched its airstrike 12 days after the initial attack. So if India launches a similar response this time round, it may not be for days or even weeks. There's a lot to unpack here though, with this story on Modi's vow to pursue the perpetrators reported on by more than 169 sources. Interestingly, we can see that of those, 29% came from left-leaning outlets, while 26% came from outlets that lean right. Looking at the headlines, you can also see some differences, with right-leaning coverage generally emphasising Modi's message as powerful and resolute, and left-leaning coverage generally framing it in terms of escalating tensions. We're able to do that because of our sponsor Ground News, whose incredible website and app lets you discover the news and pulls back the curtain on media bias. Built by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news, with Ground News ingesting over 50,000 articles from all over the world, and then organising each by story. For each and every story, you can see the number of reporting sources, where these sources lean on the political spectrum at an individual level and group level, compare the headlines of each source, and read each article all without ever leaving the app. But one of the best parts of the app is their blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other, helping you better break out of your media bubble and discover what those on the other side of the political spectrum are really saying. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the unlimited Access Vantage plan using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.